405 pounds. He said it before anyone asked. He said it to a stranger at the Bright Angel trailhead, the way some people hand you their credentials before a meeting, the way some people need you to know the number before they will let you know anything else about them. 405 pounds on the bench, a real number earned over years of brutal and disciplined work, and it would not save him. Welcome back to Doomed Departures. What you are about to hear is a composite story. It is built from real patterns, real rescues, and real records kept by the people who work the Grand Canyon, but the man at the center of it is an invention, assembled from 1,000 versions of the same July morning. No real person is named here. The man is a dramatization. The danger is not. You have seen him anyway. Standing at the trailhead with the sun already pressing down like a hand on the back of the neck, announcing his bench press to someone he had met 90 seconds earlier. Maybe you have stood near a man like that. Maybe, on some morning, you would rather forget. You have been him. The ranger on duty that morning had heard the number before. Not that exact number, but the shape of it. She had worked this rim for the better part of a decade, long enough to stop being surprised by anything except the view, which still caught her some mornings when the light came up clean over the far wall. The trail below her had become something she knew the way you know a difficult relative, every mood of it, every place it turned on people. She gave him the standard warning in the standard voice, triple-digit heat in the inner gorge, turn around by noon, carry more water than you think you could possibly need, and then carry more than that. She had said these words 1,000 times, and she watched his face while she said them. Watched that particular expression that was not quite dismissal and not quite contempt, but lived somewhere in the narrow country between the two. He did not argue with her. People who argue sometimes listen. He nodded at a point slightly above her head and went down the trail. And here is the question written into every rescue log this canyon keeps. Why does it so often claim the people who are most certain they do not need to be warned? He had passed the sign on the way in. Everyone does. It stands at the trailhead in plain language, the kind of language the Park Service has sharpened over years of burying the lesson in the most direct words available. Down is optional. Up is mandatory. Do not attempt to hike to the river and back in a single day. He read it the way he read the nutrition label on something he had already decided to eat. The letters went in, the meaning did not. That is the first refusal, and it is the quietest one, because it does not feel like refusing anything at all. It feels like reading. The trail down does not threaten you. That is the whole trap. It seduces you. The first mile drops roughly 1,100 feet through limestone and sandstone stacked like the pages of a textbook nobody made him read, rust and cream and deep ochre laid down over a span of time the mind cannot actually hold. The air cools as you lose elevation. After the bald exposure of the rim, that coolness arrives like a reward, like the canyon has decided to welcome you in personally. Every switchback hands you a view more dramatic than the last. The walls fold in around you, and the strange thing, the dangerous thing, is that the closing in feels like protection. It feels like the canyon is holding you. It is not holding you. It is lowering you. He passed people easily, a couple in their 60s, moving with the deliberate care of two people who had read the sign and believed it. A lean woman with trekking poles and a wide-brimmed hat and the unhurried rhythm of someone who had done this before. A family with a child, stopped in a patch of shade, the parents checking a water bottle against the hours left in the day. He moved through all of them, the way he moved through a warm-up set, without effort, barely registering their faces. The Park Service has a phrase for what the Grand Canyon does to the ordinary logic of a hike. They call it an inverted mountain, On a normal peak, you climb while you are fresh and descend on whatever you have left, the hard part behind you when your body is most depleted. Here, the geometry is turned upside down. You walk down into it while you feel strong, spending energy you do not notice spending, and you arrive at the bottom already taxed. And then, only then, the real climb begins in heat that thickens by the hour, up a trail that gives back nearly a vertical mile to the rim. He looked back up at that rim, still clearly visible, still close enough to seem reasonable, and he thought a single thought: this is nothing. That thought is the trap closing, not the heat, not the distance, the thought. Here is the part nobody tells the strongest person on the trail. Muscle is expensive, not only to build, which everyone understands, but to carry and to run, which almost no one considers until the canyon explains it to them. Every pound of skeletal muscle a body carries burns more energy at rest than the same weight of fat, and in extreme heat, that small constant furnace does not bank down. It runs hotter. A heavily built body generates more internal heat than a lean one simply by existing, simply by idling. And more internal heat means more cooling required. And the only cooling the body has out here is water turned to sweat and given up to the air. So the most muscular body on the trail is also the thirstiest body on the trail, and it does not know it yet because it has never once been anywhere its strength could not buy its way out. There is a second cost hidden underneath the first. To cool itself, the body pushes blood toward the skin to shed heat, the same blood the muscles want and the same blood the heart is straining to drive uphill. So the heart rate climbs to cover the gap and keeps climbing, and a man who has always trusted his heart to answer a heavy demand never wonders what happens when the demand simply does not stop. The lean woman with the trekking poles he had passed near the top was running cooler than he was, lighter. Her body was making a smaller demand on its reserves, and she had a hat, poles to spare her legs, and the patience to go slow. He had read nothing in her. She was, without knowing it, the second warning. And he walked straight past it. So were the couple in their 60s. So was the family rationing water in the shade. The canyon posts its warnings in the form of the people doing it right, and he had overtaken every one of them without slowing down. The Park Service will tell you, if you ask, that the majority of canyon rescues involve people who felt completely fine at their turnaround point. Not struggling, not frightened, fine. The crisis does not announce itself at the bottom of the trail. It builds quietly on the way back up, in the heat, in the muscle, in arithmetic that does not care in the slightest about a bench press record. The body that feels fine at the river is a body that has simply not yet been asked the real question. The climb back up starts the way most dangerous things start, gradually, almost pleasantly. He turned around at the river, and turning around there felt correct, deliberate. A decision made from strength rather than necessity, which is exactly how he wanted to be making his decisions. The first switchbacks were manageable. His legs were tired in the familiar way, loaded and a little heavy, the way they got after a hard squat session, and he knew that feeling intimately. He had trained through worse than this, he told himself so, and for a few minutes it was even true. But the canyon had been waiting for precisely this moment, the way it waits for everyone. The sun stood overhead now, and the walls that had cooled him on the way down were doing the opposite of cooling him. They were radiating. Sandstone and limestone hold heat the way a cast iron pan holds heat, drinking it in all morning and then giving it back in slow waves that arrive from every direction at once. Not only from above, from the sides, from the trail beneath his boots. The generous shade of the morning had pivoted with the sun and left almost nothing, and the rock was now a thing that breathed heat at him from all sides at the same time. His pace slowed, and he told himself the slowing was strategy, conserving energy, smart hiking. This was the third warning, and it came from inside him, from a body that had started doing the math his pride would not do. His heart rate had climbed and stayed climbed. His mouth had gone tacky and strange. The sweat that had been pouring off him an hour ago had thinned to something stingy, which is the body beginning to ration the water it no longer has, the furnace turning down the only hose it owns. He read none of it. He felt the slowing and called it a choice. He stopped at a flat rock and sat, drank, looked up at the rim. It did not look closer. That is the moment the canyon collects what it is owed, not when you fall, because most people do not fall. Not when you collapse, because most people are not given even the dignity of collapsing. The canyon collects when you sit on a warm rock and do the arithmetic and watch the arithmetic fail. He had burned through more water than he had planned to burn, far more. And the trail above him had multiplied into a stack of switchbacks that seemed to breed every time he rounded one. The rim he had laughed at from the bottom now hung over him like a price he could not pay. Smaller hikers moved past him going up, leaner, steadier. Not fast, just continuous, the way the woman with the poles had been continuous, the way the older couple had been continuous. They did not stop. He watched them pass and felt something move in him that had nothing to do with muscle and everything to do with arithmetic. This was the fourth warning, and it was the cruelest because it was the whole moral of the morning, walking past him on the trail in plain daylight. Every person he had overtaken on the way down was now overtaking him on the way up. The confidence was gone. What replaced it was not yet panic. It was the front edge of panic, the part that still wears the face of reason. He stood up. His legs answered, but slowly, the way a phone answers a command when the battery sits at 4%, functional for now and only for now. Two hikers passed him, lean and unhurried, and one of them glanced back at him with a look he understood completely, because it was the look he had been giving people his entire life. The humiliation landed and then dissolved into something far more useful and far more frightening. He was in trouble, real trouble. And he was no longer certain he could start moving again once he let himself stop. Have you ever pushed past a warning that some quiet part of you already knew was right? A sign you read and overrode, a person who told you the truth in a voice you did not like, a number on a label you decided did not apply to you? Tell me about it in the comments, because the canyon rescue teams were already moving toward this man before he ever made the call to ask for help. They did not wait for him to admit it. That is the difference between the people who work this place and the people who only visit it. They found him roughly 200 feet below the 3-mile rest house. 2 rangers and a volunteer, carrying extra water and an electrolyte kit, gear they had staged at the trailhead before sunrise, because July in the inner gorge does not surprise the people who work there. It surprises only the people who do not. The ranger who had warned him at the rim was not among the 3 on the trail. She was working the radio, moving resources, doing the unglamorous half of a rescue the rescued person never sees, and she had flagged this one early, the moment he nodded at a point above her head and walked away. He was conscious when they reached him. Sitting against the canyon wall, with his knees up and his head tipped back, in the posture of a man who has finally run out of the one thing he was most certain he had. He did not argue when they handed him the water. He did not say the number. He did not say anything at all, and the silence of a loud man is its own kind of confession. The Park Service runs something on the order of 400 search and rescue operations in the Grand Canyon in a single year. A meaningful share of them involve exactly the kind of person you would never expect. Physically fit, confident, arriving at the rim with every conventional reason to believe their body was equal to the task. The canyon does not sort people by fitness. It has never once been impressed by fitness. It sorts them by preparation, and those are not the same thing, and the gap between them is where the helicopters get earned. The rescue is not a punishment. It is an invoice. And the strange, uncomfortable truth at the center of every one of these stories is that the person who ignored the warning is rarely the one who pays it. The bill goes to the rangers who hiked down into the heat with extra water on their backs. It goes to the volunteer who gave up a day off. It goes to the woman on the radio who had this man's likely outcome mapped before he reached the first switchback, and who would do the whole thing again tomorrow for someone exactly like him. Because somebody has to be prepared enough for both of them. He survived. Say it plainly, because it matters, and because not every version of this morning ends this way. He survived, but survival here did not belong to him. It belonged to the people who came down to get him. If you want to keep hearing the stories that live in that exact place, where certainty meets consequence and the bill comes due for somebody, then consider subscribing. Not for the channel as a number, for the simple act of being one more person who hears these warnings and decides quietly to take them seriously. That is the point of this place. So let me ask you the real one. What warning have you walked past in your life, completely certain it did not apply to you? The ranger at the rim has watched this exact pattern repeat for years, not once. Not a dozen times, hundreds. Athletes, climbers, marathon runners. People who had every reason by any ordinary measure to trust their own bodies and who learned on a switchback alone that the canyon does not grade on that curve. She stopped arguing with them a long time ago, and people sometimes mistake that for her having given up. She has not given up. She has simply learned the one thing the canyon taught her that she could never quite teach anyone else. It makes the argument far better than she ever could, and it makes it only once, and it makes it at the worst possible time to be hearing it for the first time. The canyon has claimed people across every group you could name, young and old, fit and unfit, first-timers and people who believed they already knew it. The common thread is never fitness, and it is never age, and it is never experience. The common thread is the gap, that dangerous distance between what a person believes they are capable of and what the canyon actually indifferently demands. 405 pounds. In a gym, that number is real and it is earned. It stands for years of early mornings and refused desserts and genuine grinding discipline, and the canyon does not diminish a single ounce of it. The canyon is not cruel about the number. It is something worse than cruel. It is uninterested. Because in the inner gorge at 110 degrees, there is exactly one number the canyon is willing to understand, and it is not the most you have ever lifted, and it is not your personal record, and it is not the count of years you have spent building the body you arrived in. There is only one credential the canyon recognizes down there, and it fits inside a single question you can answer easily at the trailhead or fail to answer on a switchback. How much water are you carrying? That is the entire test. The ranger knew the answer standing at the trailhead in the cool of the morning, with all the time in the world to say it. He learned it somewhere on the way back up, alone, with legs that had stopped listening and a rim that would not come closer. The rim looks exactly the way it looked that morning. It always does. The canyon does not post a scoreboard. It does not update its signs to include his story or anyone else's. It simply sits there, enormous and patient and beautiful in a way that makes the danger almost impossible to believe, until you are standing inside it with the walls breathing heat at you from every side. Every single year, thousands of people stand at that trailhead and feel precisely what he felt. Some of them read the sign slowly and believe it. Some of them do the honest math on water and heat and hours. And some of them are already telling the ranger their bench press. The canyon will be waiting for all three. It has that kind of patience. It has nothing in the world but time, and it never once needs to raise its voice. This has been Doomed Departures. Stay safe, and we will see you on the next one.